Yeah, I'm gonna go orange for 500.
A standing room only crowd of more than 60 Manchester residents attended a public hearing held by the town's planning commission on Monday, January 8th, to discuss some wide-ranging changes proposed for the town's zoning ordinances and district boundaries. In the big picture sense, the commission has two main goals with the top-to-bottom review they've been conducting for roughly the past 2 years, and which began with several public forums and walking tours across the length and breadth of the town's boundaries. Those goals are to protect the essential rural character of the town, while promoting and encouraging denser development and mixed use in the town's core, making it possible for more people to afford to own or rent housing in the town center by encouraging so-called workforce housing to be created, is another desired outcome in conjunction with a pedestrian-friendly downtown. 12 new zoning districts would be created to replace the existing ones in this first top-to-bottom overhaul of the zoning ordinances and districts since zoning was first adopted in Manchester in the early 1970s. The Planning Commission members hope that these districts will better reflect current land use patterns while preparing things for future development that would be in keeping with the town's essential character. Audience members lobbed several questions about some of the specific proposals contained in the proposed ordinances and district maps, such as raising the height limit on buildings to allow for a fourth story in some cases, the idea being to create more rentable housing space for people who wanted to live in or near the town center. Most of the questions dealt with the new downtown and mixed-use districts.
What I'm saying is, I think it would be horrible to increase building size to 4 stories. It's a good thing to have the first 2 stories to be usable. However, I don't see any overall social benefit to the public in the town core by raising building size 5 feet to 4 stories.
The number one goal we found in our meetings was to try to get more people living downtown, which means residential units in the downtown. And in order to do that, you have to make it feasible for a developer to want to build units in the downtown, which means it needs to be financially feasible. And the way we found to do that is to get economy of scale and get another floor in there so that they can have an additional floor to be able to build the units in to make it financially feasible for a developer to be willing to spend the money. And to be honest with you, most developers are telling us that 4 is not enough as well. So they're saying it should be even more than that.
It seems to me, in reading the advertisements in the shopping guide and other papers, there are a lot of units available that are subsidized in Manchester, in Torrey Knoll, and in Bournebrook, and those areas. And I don't know why they're not occupied, or why there's empty units, and many of them are subsidized. So I think that's a good question about who needs housing and how it's handled. The second thing is, the 3rd floor and the 4th floor of buildings, my observation in living here all my life, and driving through Wallingford and going to Rutland and going to Bennington, the 3rd floors of every building in those cities are vacant and have been vacant for years and years and years. And for some reason, people don't want to live in them or won't live in them, or they're too expensive to rehab and turn into units. So I think, increasing the story, it's a great, admirable thing to increase the density, which is what I think you're trying to do. But will it in fact create housing? I don't know, because it hasn't created it in Rutland, it hasn't created it in Bennington, although they've got a massive project that they're gonna do now. And it's
Teacher at Men's who works for our police department making $55,000 a year. They don't qualify for affordable housing, but yet they have a very challenging time finding market rate housing in our communities. So what Manchester has is a gap. We have plenty, we almost have more than enough affordable housing, and we have plenty of housing at the higher end of the scale, and we have nothing in between. And so how do you create those opportunities in between?
So I admire what you're doing, but I just wonder who's going to build it and who's going to buy it. That's, it remains to be seen, I guess.
The proposed changes in the rural districts didn't come up for much discussion at Monday's hearing, which was recessed until January 22nd. In the rural districts, the big change is raising the minimum lot size from 2 to 5 acres in the rural residential zone and from 2 to 10 acres in the rural agricultural zone, although undevelopable land, such as wetlands, will now be counted towards the 5 or 10 acres. The Planning Commission will continue the hearing on the 22nd at the Town Hall, hearing comments and fielding questions. They may modify the document somewhat after they've heard all the feedback, before it gets its final approval by the Planning Commission. It will then go to the Town Select Board for final approval.
Well, I think there's some good input tonight. I think there's some things we can look at a little closer, maybe adjust some percentages or wording here or there. But I think in general, the path is still, we're still going to be going in the same direction we had intended. But there were definitely some good comments tonight that I think we can use to adjust some of the language a little bit.
For the GNAT TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.